Let's jump right into this explainer and uncover the deeply rooted history and modern realities of Islam in the United States. When we hear about this topic, it's almost always framed around very recent events. But the actual data, the historical records, they tell a completely different, incredibly rich story. Before we even map out where we're going, think about this. Thomas Jefferson actually hosted iftars, the traditional meal to break the Ramadan fast, right there at the White House. Muslims fought in the American Revolution. The real story starts way before the modern era, and we're going to unpack all of it.
So, we've got 5 key areas on our radar for this explainer: roots in early America, a diverse demographic mosaic, culture and contributions, the political landscape, and perceptions and challenges. Let's get right to it.
Starting off with Part 1, Roots in Early America, Centuries of History.
So when did the first Muslims actually arrive in America? Honestly, it's super easy to assume it's just a 20th century immigrant religion, kind of driven by modern globalization. But the data challenges that immediately. To find the very first Muslim presence in North America, we have to rewind the clock way back to the era of early European exploration and the horrific realities of the transatlantic slave trade.
Look at this quote from George Washington in 1785. He was completely willing to hire Muslims, or Mohammedans as they called them back then, at Mount Vernon, stating he'd employ people of any religion if they were good workmen. Think about that phrase, good workmen. Centuries before religious liberty was officially the law of the land, founding fathers like Washington, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin were already factoring Islam into their blueprint for American religious freedom.
And we see this continuous thread woven all the way through early America. Get this, in 1528, a Moroccan explorer named Mustafa Zamori shipwrecked near modern-day Texas. By 1682, Virginia statutes were explicitly referencing Muslim slaves. In fact, historians estimate up to 30% of enslaved Africans brought to some regions of America were Muslim. We even have records of enslaved scholars, like Bilali Muhammad, writing complex Arabic legal manuscripts on a Georgia plantation. Internationally, Morocco was the absolute first country to officially recognize U.S. independence in 1777. Fast forward to the Civil War, and Muslims were actually fighting in the Union Army. There's even this wild historical account of a Union officer rushing into a burning library at the University of Alabama in 1865 just to save a rare copy of the Quran. The roots run incredibly deep.
Moving on to Part 2, a diverse demographic mosaic, the modern American Muslim. Okay, this is fascinating. American Muslims are the only faith community surveyed in the U.S. with absolutely no single majority race. A complete breakdown shows 26% identify as white, which includes folks of Middle Eastern or North African descent, 18% Asian, 18% Arab, 9% Black, and 5% Hispanic. It's a complete demographic mosaic. There is literally no single look or ethnic origin that defines an American Muslim today.
And that diversity totally extends to denominations, too. You've got about 55% identifying as Sunni and 16% as Shia, but a solid 15% are non-denominational, meaning they just identify as Muslim. Plus, America has a completely unique history of indigenous Black Muslim movements. Groups like the Moorish Science Temple and the Nation of Islam have been focusing on community building since the early 20th century. Toss in the Ahmadiyya community, which set up shop here back in 1920, and you've got an incredibly varied religious landscape.
Now, when we compare all this to the broader U.S. public, Muslim Americans show remarkable socioeconomic parity. Their household income is basically distributed right alongside the rest of the country, sitting solidly in the middle class. But check out the education stats. 73% of Muslim American women pursue higher education. That actually outpaces Muslim men. It's a huge indicator of an upwardly mobile, highly integrated community where female empowerment in education is a leading trend.
All right, Part 3, Culture and Contributions, Shaping American Society. Let's see how this population is woven into the country's modern achievements.
You can literally see their cultural footprint everywhere. Obviously, we all know larger-than-life sports legends like Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but the impact goes way beyond sports. How about architecture? Fazlur Khan was the pioneering structural engineer who designed the Sears Tower. He quite literally shaped the towering American skyline. In science, you've got brilliant minds like Nobel Prize-winning chemist Ahmed Zewail. And in business, highly influential figures like Shahid Khan, who owns the NFL's Jacksonville Jaguars. These aren't peripheral figures, they are central to American industry and culture.
And here's a really interesting stat from Pew Research. About 36% of Muslim American women wear the hijab in public. But surprisingly,
native-born Muslim women are actually more likely to wear it than first-generation immigrants. Why does that matter? Because it totally flips the old myth that assimilation means abandoning your cultural markers. Instead, it proves that for many, American freedom actually empowers religious expression. It shows a really confident American identity.
Next up, Part 4, the political landscape, a dramatic shift. The political trajectory for this demographic over the last 2 decades is basically a roller coaster. In 2000, Muslim Americans voted 78% Republican, but just 4 years later, in 2004, that flipped to 93% voting Democratic, a massive 78-point swing in practically no time. It was a direct, measurable response to post-9/11 political rhetoric and security policies. By 2020, we see things rebalance slightly to 78% Democratic and 19% Republican, but that wild shift in the early 2000s completely redefined their political home base.
But despite that intense political whiplash, their civic engagement is actually accelerating. Today, 75% of American Muslims are registered to vote. And here is an expectation-subverting data point for you. Frequent mosque attendees are statistically more likely to vote and work on community problems than those who don't attend. So, higher religious involvement actually correlates with higher civic duty. This grassroots drive has led to huge milestones, from Keith Ellison becoming the first Muslim congressman in 2006 to a recent wave of female Muslim mayors and state legislators winning office.
Finally, Part 5. Perceptions and Challenges, Navigating Post-9/11 America.
1,501. That is the number of documented anti-Muslim attacks in 2001 alone. To put the sheer scale of that into perspective, there were only 354 reported the year before. It was a massive, immediate spike that fundamentally altered daily life. And while that initial wave did subside somewhat, comprehensive studies consistently show that Muslims remain one of the most likely faith groups to report experiencing religious-based discrimination in the U.S. today.
We can see this reflected in polling data from 2018 looking at the Islamophobia Index, a scale out of 100 designed to measure public anti-Muslim sentiment. The scores vary widely across demographics. White evangelicals at 40, Catholics at 22, and Muslims themselves at 17. It's a stark reminder that while majorities of Americans oppose discrimination, negative stereotypes and institutional hurdles, things like previous travel bans or heightened airport screening, still really impact the day-to-day realities of American Muslims.
But here is the big takeaway. Despite facing all of that, the community remains deeply anchored in America. 81% of American Muslims say they highly value their American identity. That perfectly matches the broader U.S. public. Even more compelling, research shows that higher religious identity actually correlates with a stronger American identity among Muslims. They don't view their faith and their citizenship as competing forces at all. They are completely complementary.
So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. How does our understanding of American history change when we include these centuries-old contributions of minority faiths? When we look at the whole picture, from 16th century explorers to skyline-shaping architects to massive shifts at the voting booth, how does it fundamentally reshape the American story? It's pretty clear Islam isn't just some new arrival. It's been intricately woven into the fabric from day one. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.